Hello to everyone joining today's policy simulation as part of the Big Ten collaboration, Democracy in the 21st Century. I especially want to acknowledge everyone from the University of Minnesota. Go Gophers. As the chair of the Rules Committee, imagine how excited I was to hear that some of the brightest minds from all across the country were coming together to simulate a Rules Committee hearing. Yes! I bet looking at my colleagues and me is like looking in a mirror, or maybe one of those apps that shows what you would look like in a few years or, well, maybe decades. But I'm pretty proud of the Rules Committee and what we've been doing the last few years. You should know that Senator Blunt, the Republican ranking member on the committee, he's from Missouri, he and I are friends, not just like fake friends in the Senate, we're real friends. And we've done a lot together, including, and this was because of our Rules Committee role in the jurisdiction we have about the Capitol, changing the sexual harassment investigation rules so it's easier for people to bring claims. We work together to allow senators who have new babies to bring them on the Senate floor. Senator Duckworth was the first to do that with her 6-week-old baby. We have worked together, of course, on election issues, and we most significantly recently worked together on the investigation of what happened at the Capitol and made a bunch of recommendations on a bipartisan basis for changing things at the Capitol Police and security, and we got a new chief. So it's a kind of an exciting committee to be on. By the way, it used to be no one ever heard of it, and we've changed that. So this is really, now we know we've arrived that you guys are doing this. We have a lot of work to do, I think you know, when it comes to oversight of the Election Assistance Commission, the Federal Election Commission, and then, of course, our election laws as a whole. When I took over as chair at the beginning of last year, it was clear to me that we had many, many challenges when it came to upholding our democracy. What did we do? Well, we carried out an inauguration in the wake of the January 6th insurrection. It was Senator Blunt and myself that took that long walk, 3:30 in the morning, with 2 young women with the mahogany box after the insurrection, filled with those ballots up to W for Wyoming, walked through the broken glass and the spray-painted statues to make sure our job was done. We traveled to states, I did with a number of the other members, to like Georgia and Wisconsin to understand the impact of restrictive voting laws. And I put forth legislation to protect every American's right to vote. That legislation, the Freedom to Vote Act, was a product of many hearings, hours of expert testimony, and months of conversations with my Democratic colleagues. As you know, it didn't have Republican support, but nevertheless, I was able to get every single Democrat on the bill in the Senate. It was designed to establish basic federal standards for elections across the country, get secret money out of politics, and protect election officials, because we've actually seen double, triple the amount of threats against members of Congress, but we've also seen an inordinate amount of threats against local election officials. It's really scary right now, and this has all happened since January 6th. Threats against people on both sides of the aisle. It also has provisions, this bill, to address the very real rollback of voting rights we've seen in places like Montana, where same-day registration was in place for 15 years. Over 8,000 people took advantage of it on Election Day in 2020 to either change their address because they moved or registered to begin with. So what happened? Sadly, the legislature in Montana said, well, we're going to get rid of something we've had in place for 15 years that 8,000 people used in the last election. To me, that just creates confusion and voter suppression in the end. We've seen similar laws doing other things that change the existing voting laws in places like Texas, Iowa, and Georgia. As you probably know, the Freedom to Vote Act had the support of every Democrat and in any other legislature in the country, because we have a tied Senate right now, 50-50, but in the Senate, the vice president can come in and break that tie. That's always been the tradition. So we had the 51 votes to pass it, but we didn't have 60, which is this thing called the filibuster that we have in the Senate. We haven't had it forever, but we have it right now. And so there was a big debate over the Senate rules, and unfortunately that didn't pass, so we weren't able to pass the bill. It was disappointing, yes, but as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. has said, disappointment is finite, but hope is infinite. And there is so much more work we can do, like mobilizing around state legislatures to make sure that we pass good voting laws and don't pass bad ones, funding elections to ensure election officials have the resources they need to administer our elections safely, and fixing the Electoral College. But of course, none of this would be a replacement for the Freedom to Vote Act. I will never stop fighting to protect voting rights in this country. And if history has shown us anything, it is that the fight for voting rights is never really over. That's why I'm so glad to see that the next generation, as in you guys, is just as passionate about this crucial issue. As you head into the simulation, here is my advice. Fight hard for what you believe in, depending on who you're playing in this simulation. Listen to the people you work with. That's really important. Even when you disagree, remember, sit up straight. The C-SPAN cameras are always watching. And by the way, some of the people we may have disagreements with on elections and other things, I've worked with on other issues. Gotten their support just this week on a bill I had on antitrust. Some of the very same people that might be against me on voting. So it's just an example of you find common ground where you can find it. And by the way, if you find yourself wishing that this simulation would never end, okay, that means you should run for office. So keep up the great work. Enjoy the rest of the program. You deserve it. Thanks, everyone. It's such an honor that you're doing this.